Welcome, everyone. I'm Christine Biglin again from St. Mary's County Library. Welcome to our virtual program. Thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. I'd like to introduce Barb Whipkey, who is the owner of the Wild Birds Unlimited stores in Lexington Park and LaPlata. And she is going to talk to us tonight about the 12 elements of a thoughtful bird feeding station. Thank you so much for sharing all your vast knowledge with us, Barb. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. This is kind of a wrap up of two other presentations that we did. If you missed those two, that's not going to be a problem though. You didn't actually have to see those to watch this one. However, if you want to catch those ones, you still can go back and find those by going to the St. Mary's County Library's YouTube channel. And then if you just search for my last name, Whipkey, Whipkey, Whip and Key, you'll find my other talks there that I've done with the library. The last two were let me see if I can think, the top 20 backyard birds of Southern Maryland and Bird Feeding 101. So those are two great ones that will help leading up to this if you're new to the hobby or you're just wanting to learn a little more about the local birds. And even if you're not watching right here from Southern Maryland, you're going to find a lot of the same birds if you're anywhere in the Northeast, Northern Mid-Atlantic area. A lot of our birds are going to be the same, the feeder birds. We're going to each have some different ones, but these basic top 20 are going to be the same. So check out their YouTube channel. We often send customers there to look for some of our talks to find out ones more about bluebirds and different ones that we've done. So watch for those. So tonight I will not be screen sharing because we have a whole lot of information and things to show and share. So we're going to be covering the 12 elements of a thoughtful bird feeding station. You're not going to be able to see this chart, I know that. But this is kind of like the basic roadmap we're going to cover. There's going to be a few ways you can get a hold of this. It is on our website, which Christina will be sending out the link to that after the talk. So you can find it there on our website if you would like. If you are local, you can walk into the store and ask for one of our free hobby guides, and there's a nice spread of it there. If you have Jim Carpenter's book, The Joy of Bird Feeding, it is also in there. And it's just a good guide for those 12 elements that every bird feeding station should have. You don't have to have those when you start off, but like I said, it's just kind of a roadmap that you can use to get yourself up and running as you're trying to establish that feeding station. It's a good map that you can use as you're building that perfect bird feeding station. And you may find it at your local library, wherever you are also, you may be able to check that book out there. So the first one on there, number one, is a foundational feeder. So everybody needs a foundational feeder. That's that one feeder when you're first getting started that you're going to look for. So a foundational feeder is that one feeder that is always going to have bird seed in it. When those birds come flying up looking for food, they always know that you're going to have food in it. They can always count on you to have something in that feeder. So that feeder needs to be of decent size that if you go off for a week's vacation, that it's still going to have food in it. The birds aren't going to starve if it does run empty, but it's usually going to be full. So a couple good ones are going to be something like this. This is what we call a tube feeder. So nice and long on there. Because it has a tray on it, even our cardinals can eat. So cardinals have a short, thick neck. If you look out in your yard tomorrow, take a close look at the cardinals, and you'll notice they have a short, fat neck on them. So cardinals aren't able to land on a perch like this and turn sideways to eat. They need to eat forward facing. So with a feeder like this, we add a tray onto the bottom. That then lets the cardinal sit on that tray and eat forward. So look at your foundational feeder, your primary feeder. If it has a tray, make sure it's not a little tiny narrow tray because those cardinals have pretty big breasts on those. So make sure that they can stand on the side of it and still be able to get into the feeding ports. And then this particular one, we have a weather guard on it. That's going to help keep your seed dry. Bird seed is pretty expensive, so you don't want to fill it up. Then we get a nice big rain and wet all your seed. So that is a good option for a foundational feeder. This is what we call a tube style feeder. Then another style would be what we call a hopper style. These are the ones that look more like a house style. They're going to have the roof built in on them. And again, they're going to hold a lot of seed as well. So you can open it up easily to fill. Any of the birds can eat from those. I talked about the cardinals, but because they can eat forward facing, those cardinals can pop right in there and eat. So again, nice size on that. So that's another good foundational feeder. You don't have to have both sizes or both styles. Just one of those would be your foundational feeder. So when you're looking for that first feeder, look for a tray that those cardinals and larger birds with the short necks can eat from, and that's going to hold plenty of food. Okay, so number 2 on our list is a tray feeder. So I always say my only regrets with a tray feeder is that I didn't get it sooner. And we hear it all the time from people that they love their tray feeders and they wish they'd have bought it sooner. A tray feeder invites everybody to the party. When you add that tray feeder, everyone can eat from a tray feeder. A lot of different styles of a tray feeder. It can be something as simple as this, and it's just what it says. It's a tray that you feed them from. So with that, those birds like the cardinals can pop down in there and eat. I do recommend with tray feeders, again, adding weather guards. I'm a huge fan of weather guards to protect that seed. So this is one style tray feeder. You can put tray feeders up. I don't know if you can see it in the background, but we have tray feeders that mount on pole systems back here. It's in the middle back there, has a roof on it. This would be a hanging tray feeder where the roof is built into it. So this is another style tray feeder, but as you can see, anybody can pop in there and eat. So some style of tray feeder you want to add to your list. And number 3 on the list is going to be a fat feeder, something to get fat into the birds. So obviously for the winter months, we need that fat to keep them warm. Fats or suets is what a lot of people are familiar with, the most common type of fat. It's the favorite food of our woodpeckers. They also use it to feed the young. So feeding fat is not just a winter thing. You also want to offer that in the spring, summer, so that they can feed those young. During the heat of the summer, we have a no melt suet. So if you pop in the store now, what you're going to find, it'll look just like the suet cakes you're used to seeing, but they have no melt. It has a higher melting point on it. So it's not going to be dripping down the side of your feeder. You can put it right out in the heat of the sun and not worry about that. So fat feeders, typical square suets. knocking things down back here. So most of you are probably familiar with the little green cages. You can use that. This is a little bit different style I have here. This is what I call a tail prop. You can see down here, this is for just what it says, a tail prop. When woodpeckers eat, they use their tail for balance. So they're going to prop their little tail feathers here, use that to balance themselves, and that's how they'll eat their suet from there. So definitely a fat feeder. You can offer it in the suet. There's also other ways rather than the suet squares to do that. If you haven't tried the spreadable suet, bark butter is an option. This can be spread right on trees. And now you're thinking, and the squirrels would love that. But that's available in a hot pepper formula. This is a good way to bring in some birds that may not come to feeders. By putting that out on trees, you'll tend to see some different birds. Or if you've just run out of space on your bird feeding pole to offer suet, you can expand and use your trees without having to add another pole system right now. So bark butter. There's different kind of foods that have suet mixed into it that you can go with it. This one is a bluebird bugberry blend, and it has little suet nuggets in it. So just look at the ingredients when you're shopping and see if there's suet in there. And you might find it mixed in with some of the foods that you're using as well. And then a finch feeder. So right now, everybody needs a finch feeder up and going. Crazy number of goldfinches at the feeders right now. We are out here in the middle of a parking lot and we have goldfinches. Definitely not a place where we should be seeing goldfinches. That is because it's nesting season for the goldfinches. They are our last nesters of the season. Goldfinch are vegetarians, so they wait until late summer until they're sure that food is going to be plentiful. So by adding that finch feeder, you're going to offer a food that only the finch can eat. You will see that finch will go and eat from, if you've got black oil going or you have sunflower chips, they will eat there as well. However, if you add a finch feeder, and a finch feeder has little tiny holes in it, so that's going to prevent a lot of your bigger birds from eating from this. So that cuts down the amount of competition for your finch. So yes, your finch can eat from those other feeders, but you're making it easier for your finch when you offer them a feeder of their own. So you'll end up with more birds, more goldfinch, house finches, if you offer them exclusive feeders just for them. Because those goldfinch are very polite little birds. So they'll often sit up here and just kind of wait for a little port to open. And by the time a port opens and they get down there, someone else has taken it over. And they tend to not be willing to battle their way in to get a port. So it's always recommended that you offer a finch feeder to give those finch a little spot to eat from. So that is number 4 is the finch feeder. And then the food that would go into a finch feeder is going to be Niger, which is a little small black seed. You may have seen that before. So you would either use Niger or something called finch blend. Finch blend is a combination of Finch's 2 favorite food. It's that black Niger mixed with sunflower chips. So that's the only seed that you want to put one of those two into a finch feeder. Any other seeds are just going to be too big to flow through there. So Niger, the black seed, or finch blend, which is a combination. If you're hanging your finch feeder on a pole system that's squirrel proofed, then you can go with the finch blend. If you're putting your finch feeder somewhere where squirrels can get to it, then we recommend staying with straight Niger. Niger has to be heat treated before it's brought into the US. Typically in the processing of the heat treating it, the squirrels decide they don't like Niger by itself. So usually that kind of works as a good deterrent. And then another type of finch feeder. You can also use a little mesh one like this. This is a finch feeder as well, and it's going to have just little tiny square holes on it. So you have to make sure they're the very tiny ones. If they're any bigger than this, that would be for peanut splits. So make sure it's the very tiny ones. Then you can use your finch blend or Niger in that one as well. And of course, again, weather guards definitely on those finch feeders to protect that seed. Okay, next up is nectar jelly and fruit feeders. So Oriole feeders, and you're thinking Baltimore Orioles are state birds and we've never seen them here. If you want to see them, now is your best shot at seeing them. They migrate through twice a year, and we are starting to get reports of them migrating through right now. So when they migrate through, the foods they're looking for are nectar, and we have the nectar mix here. And then you can also on here, cut up an orange half, put it here. And also we have a grape jelly that you can put on there as well. It's a special grape jelly designed for the Orioles. We don't recommend using regular store jelly. It is very, very sweet. We don't want to create a sweet tooth with those Orioles. So we do recommend purchasing jelly that's designed for the birds rather than the regular jelly. It is a little too sweet for that. So Oriole feeders, of course, hummingbird feeders. Hopefully you all have hummingbird feeders out right now. If not, highly recommend getting those hummingbird feeders out. The hummingbirds are still here. They are starting to prepare to leave, but they really could use your help right now. Hummingbirds are prone to dehydration, and they've got a long journey ahead of them. So you can help out by offering that nectar to them. 1 part sugar, 4 parts water to help them along the way. There are also nectars that you can buy already designed. This particular one has electrolytes in it, which will help them with that dehydration. Do not use anything with red in it. You'll notice that this is perfectly clear. Um, there is a nectar defender you can put in there as well. This is another good additive that's going to help to prolong the life expectancy of your nectar. Right now, with the cooler temperatures that we're having, you're not having to change it quite as often. You can expect to get about a week out of it without having to change it. But definitely watch those feeders. They are going through that nectar really quickly right now because they are trying to bulk up for that journey south. So really you can help. It's been so hot that it has burned off a lot of the natural food sources. So once you no longer see any more hummingbirds, we ask that you keep your feeders up a minimum of 2 weeks after that. but we would prefer if you keep them up at least through Halloween, preferably through Thanksgiving. You don't have to fill them all the way. You won't have to change them as often because it will be cooler. But there is still likely to be those stragglers coming from the north that will be stopping through. And they're going to be looking for nectar sources. And by then, the sources of food will be very limited. So your feeder at that point can be the difference in life and death for their journey south. Um, Other ways you can do the fruits in that, if you, this is a little perch, let me show you a similar one. If you have our pole system, this little branch just twists onto our pole system, and we have some that have cups on it that you can put jelly in, that have holders that you can put the oranges in. So that's another way that you can get that jelly and oranges out there right now for the Baltimore Orioles in hopes of bringing those guys in. And then a big one, number 7, is water. Water, water, water. That's majorly important year round. Right now, one of the reasons they really need it, you may be seeing a lot of bald birds going on out there, looking like they have mange or something happening. The birds are molting right now. After nesting, songbirds molt to put on their winter feathers. They need to have nice, healthy feathers to get through the winter months. You can help them out by offering high protein foods and then water so that they can bathe, get those old feathers off. You'll start to see little pieces of feathers in your bird baths a lot. So water is majorly important right now as they try to get those old feathers off and bring in the nice new healthy ones. But of course, all year long, it's important. So number 7 is water. Of course, the basic bird baths, but then you can bring more birds into your bird bath when you add some kind of movement to it. So fountains, you can add a fountain to it. Where little solar fountains like this can be added. You can add water wigglers that move the fountain, the water around in there. If you're having problems keeping your bird baths clean, adding little pieces of copper to it. We used to say drop pennies in there, but now pennies are no longer made with copper. So you can purchase little copper discs that go in there. Mosquito dunks, you'll find these at a lot of stores. This keeps mosquitoes from laying in your bird baths. It's safe for birds. So if you're concerned that if you have standing water, you'll end up with mosquitoes, mosquito dunks are going to save you with that. You put these in there. When you go to clean the bird bath, pull the mosquito dunk out, clean the bird bath, put your fresh water back in there, and add your mosquito dunk back in there. One of these will last you about 30 days. And again, it's safe for the birds, so that's not going to be harmful. So any way you can get moving water in there is going to help to attract them. But just water, lots of water is going to be very helpful year round. And then number 8 is perching branches. So I showed you the metal ones that you can add on. If you've got our pole system, these are the easy button to add those on. You can also, again, this would just be with our pole system, but this can be added. You can see what that looks like. This gets added to the center of the pole, and then you can actually cut branches and put on here. So it turns your pole into a more natural piece, makes your pole system more natural for the birds. So that's an option. Vertical landing spots. So that's basically just having near your pole system, you want to have some shrubs, some trees. But when you're thinking of where those shrubs and trees are, you want to have thoughtful placement on those. So if you have neighborhood cats, You don't want those bushes too close to that pole system. What's going to happen with those cats is they're going to lay in waiting underneath that bush, and when the birds get focused on feeding, the cats will then launch themselves out of there. So if you do have stray cats around the yard, outdoor cats, make sure you distance that pole set up from those shrubs where the cats can lay. So just thoughtful feeding, placing, just before you set up that feeder, think about that. Where can the cats hide? One of the big ones is, where am I going to watch the birds from? If you put that feeding station around the side of the house where there's no windows, you really aren't going to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to remember to fill those feeders. You're not going to notice when they go empty. You won't notice if you have a sick bird on those. So before you install that pole system, spend some time thinking through it. Where do I spend most of my day in the house? What window has a good view? And then we're going to think about, okay, if I want to put up multiple feeding stations, where would I put them? You can put them nearby, but you don't have to. You may choose to put one in the front yard, one in the backyard, one out closer to the woods. If you're going to put one up, we have smart cameras that have a camera so you actually are just watching it from your phone. Those ones you can put out of sight of your house because you don't need to be able to see that one from the house. So that one could be around the side of the house because you'll be watching it from your phone when you should be working or doing other things. So just thoughtful feeder placement before you start setting those feeders up. Think about where you're going to put those and where you could set up multiple feeding stations. You may be going to hang one feeder, you may be going to put a window feeder up so that you can bring the birds right up to your window. And then basic problem solved. So that one is number 12, but that is probably the most important one. Because if you put that pole system up and the very first day a squirrel raccoon gets up there and destroys it, you're going to get pretty frustrated very quickly. So when you put that pole system up, if you're going to try to squirrel and raccoon proof it, you need 12-foot of clearance all the way around it. Now that's if you're going to squirrel proof it with a baffle. If you're sitting there thinking, I don't have 10-foot of clearance, don't give up. You can still feed, there's other solutions. But to baffle a pole system, we need 10-foot of clearance. So then we would put that pole here, build the station up, and then we put a baffle on it. That baffle, we have multiple styles. It depends on if you're in a wooded area. I'm going to tell you right away, put a raccoon baffle on it. Because even though you think you don't have raccoons, you have raccoons. They're just coming out at night when you're sleeping, so you're not seeing them. So by going with a raccoon baffle, and this is what a raccoon baffle looks like. It's about 3 feet tall. So it's long enough to keep your raccoons, squirrels, and even your snakes out if you're putting it on a setup with a house. So by putting that on the pole, you're keeping everybody out, except the bear. For those of you that, I know we've had several customers that have dealt with the bear this year. Uh, but it will not keep the bear out, sorry. So we would put that baffle, and we'd put the baffle about 4.5 to 5 feet high. So squirrels can jump horizontally 10 feet, and they can jump from the ground straight up 4.5 to 5 feet. So once we've done that, we've squirrel proofed it. So then you can put peanuts on that pole system. You can put whatever you want, and you don't even have to think twice. I have peanuts in the shell, out of the shell, all sorts of nuts on my feeders, everything, and never have to think about it. But if you're thinking, okay, my yard has too many trees or I don't have that space, you're not out of luck because there are truly squirrel-proof feeders that we can use. There's hot pepper products, so there's a lot of solutions. I have the squirrel-proof feeder because where I have it, I can't squirrel-proof. I use hot pepper products because I have them near some windows outside my office at home, and trees are too close there, so I can't baffle that pole. So I use a mixture of everything. And then I have about 11 or maybe more of the pole systems with baffles on them. So you can definitely feed, you can do a combination of mixture of everything. And then on my window feeders, I use hot pepper products because otherwise those squirrels would be right up there. So no matter which way you want to go or a combination of, there's solutions that we can do. But the biggest is thinking through those basic problem solvings before they become a problem. So wanted to mention a few other products that are favorites of mine. So if you do have our pole system, some of you may have never even seen this product, and I wanted to point it out because it's one of my favorites. I have two of these ones. This goes on the top of our pole. So you know where that little finial goes, the little bird finial. This one can go on the top, and then you put one of the seed cylinders on top of this. So that one's a pretty cool one. Take a look at that if you stop in the store. One of the, I actually, I totally skipped number 6, which was snacks, specialty, and convenience foods. And a couple of my favorite snack foods, well, not my favorite snack foods, but the birds to feed. I already mentioned the Bluebird blend, but one of the feeders to put that one in is this feeder right here. And it's blue, so birds tend to be attracted to their own color. This one will hold those bark butter bits, which are these little guys. And again, if you're feeding in hot pepper, those come in a hot pepper. But you can put those right in this feeder as well. You can put dried mealworms. And you can find dried mealworms at about any store, but they're a good high protein source for birds. Right now, we're trying to feed a lot of that high protein to help them through that molt. Those that love cardinal, the cardinal confetti is another great treat food to put out there as we go into, as the birds start caching food away, which means to store it away for winter. The cardinal confetti is a great caching food. So that's another good one. Um, let me see, did I miss anything on there? Oh, if you already have a pole system that you want to baffle, you're going to need to check to see if your pole system is tall enough. So this is one we often get. People will come in and want to buy a baffle for their pole system. So what I need you to do is measure from the ground to the bottom of your feeder. To baffle a pole system, the top of the baffle needs to be a minimum of 4.5 feet tall. So unfortunately, a lot of the pole systems that are sold out there are just too short. They're better used for hanging flowers or things. So the top of the baffle, we have to be able to put it right about 4.5 to 5 feet tall. And then all your feeders have to be hanging above that. If your feeder's hanging down here, the baffle is going to do no good. The squirrel's going to jump straight to the feeder. So before you pop in or head somewhere trying to buy a baffle, measure from the ground to the bottom of your feeder and see if you have at least 4.5 feet of clearance. So we know that we can safely baffle that feeder. If you don't have that, then you want to switch to hot pepper foods in those feeders or switch to a squirrel proof feeder on that station. Okay, so with that said, let's see what questions we have.
Okay. I didn't see any questions put into chat. Um, so if anybody has a question, they can just unmute. Um, while you're thinking of your question, I'm so glad you mentioned about the molting because I saw a cardinal out there that looked like it had a little vulture head
Oh, they
because
look
it was
horrendous.
bald. I know.
Yes,
So I'm glad that it's okay and it just
yeah.
is growing
The
in some new feathers.
And I did just see a question come in from Mike asking about winter for bird baths.
Oh,
So that's a good question. In the winter, we still need to be able to put out water. Birds need to be able to keep their feathers healthy in the winter as well. They need to be able to fluff up to form pockets of insulation, kind of like our down coats. And so without those clean feathers, they can't form those pockets. So in the winter months, we have heated bird baths you can get, or heaters that can be added to your bird baths that you can use those. You do have to have an electrical outlet, so kind of like those electric outlets you would use for your extension cord, those extension cords. Solar doesn't work because we just don't get enough consistent sun and they would freeze overnight. So if you don't have an electric outlet, you're just going to need to change that water often because it's really important, like I said, year round to have that water source. So good question, Mike.
yeah, and just you've mentioned before when you've talked about the heated bird baths that they're not hot tubs. They
Correct.
don't get
Yeah. If
hot
you
hot.
stick your hand in, it's going to be cold. So
It's
it's
just
not a
not
sauna
freezing.
for the birds.
Yep. So we don't have to worry about cooking the birds.
Nope.
Okay. Jessica asked where your stores are located.
Oh, the Lexington Park one is in the plaza with Kohl's and Dick's Sporting Goods. And the La Plata one is in the plaza with Target and Safeway. And all of our teams go through an extensive training. Feel free to take pictures of your feeders, of your feeding station, your backyard. We love when customers bring us pictures in that we can help with designing and planning out your yard. So bring your phone and bring those pictures right on in, and the teams they're extremely knowledgeable. It's a very thorough training they go through.
Did you talk about like what sort of food? I know you did about the finches in particular, but are there any particular types of food that we should be concentrating on right now?
Yes, so right now it's the high protein food. If you come into our store here, you're going to see that we still have nesting blend out. And although not many of our birds are still nesting, those goldfinches, as I mentioned, are. Some of them there's still a lot of young coming to the feeders, so they still need the nesting blend, and that the adults are still feeding them. But the reason we still offer nesting blend is it has the same things, the high protein, high calcium, that the birds need for feather development as they're going through the molt. Birds have their feathers are made of about 90% protein. So high protein is the foods we're pushing at them. So nesting blend, peanuts, Niger, again, we can't stress enough that finch blend, get that finch blend out there to them. Anything high in protein.
Did you see that question? Would you recommend the suction cup feeder? So I think that's
Suction
probably the
cup
window
feeder.
feeder would be
Is
my
it
guess
the
that you can suction cup onto a
Jessica, can
window.
you turn your phone on can you turn your volume on so we can talk? Are you meaning one of the window feeders? Oh, yeah, I love window feeders. I have several. Window feeders are great. I do recommend using hot pepper products in them because the squirrels do love them also. Uh, so again, it's that whole thinking through it before you start feeding it. I will use hot pepper bark butter bits in that, and then we have the fiery feast, which is the hot pepper seed. I'll use those in it also. And in one of my front window ones, it's our what's it called? Treehouse feeder, tree something feeder, treescape feeder. That's it. It's called a treescape feeder and it has 2 little cups in it, and I'll mix the hot pepper bark butter bits with the dried mealworms and put those out there for my Carolina wren. She nests in the front, and then the couple of them sleep in this on the front porch every night, year round, other than when she's nesting, then he sleeps in this alone, and she nests nearby in a geranium. And so they have a whole bed and breakfast going on. So they use that window feeder with the hot pepper bark butter bits and the dried mealworms to eat from. I mix the dried mealworms with those bark butter bits, and that's enough to keep the squirrels off of the dried mealworms. But if I use the regular bark butter bits or just the dried mealworms, those squirrels would be all over it on the front porch.
I bet your Carolina Wrens, give you a good review on TripAdvisor. Okay, so Joanne asked if the movement when you have a window feeder, do the birds get scared off by you moving around inside?
So they get used to it really quickly, after a bit. At first, we would be still, but now it doesn't phase them. They'll be right there just looking at us like, "Hey," or staring at us like, "Come fill the feeders, it's a little low."
Oh, you had mentioned putting a copper plate in the, bird bath. What
Yeah.
does the copper do?
So the copper helps to prevent the growth of algae. So it's just
Oh.
these silly little discs, and it was kind of funny when I first saw them, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's what." For years we used pennies. We would drop a little, 4 or 5 pennies in our bird baths and then scoop them out when you changed them. And somebody now is getting wealthy on these little copper discs, but they work amazing. We sell so many of these, but yeah.
Okay. How do you deter mourning doves from window feeders? Oh,
So,
they
then
hang out.
if you're having a big problem with mourning doves, I would say change the style of feeder that you're using. Um, it it we have one that has just a little tiny space for getting onto that wouldn't allow the mourning doves. I'm assuming you have a tray feeder one that's works for their bigger bodies to get on. I would use, we've got a small one that isn't enough space for the doves to get onto.
They do just sort of park themselves and hang out.
Yeah, sometimes they do like to just roost on there. You can try, if they're just doing it in the evening and roosting there, you can chase them away in the evening when you see them coming in to roost. But if it's just an all day thing, I would change your style of feeder.
Yeah. Okay. I think that we have hit everyone's questions. Thank you so much, Barb. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.